In a quiet village surrounded by rolling hills and fields of green, life moved at a gentle rhythm. Farmers tended their crops, children played under the sun, and animals roamed the meadows with a freedom that seemed endless. Among the many creatures that called this village home was a small family of goats. They were simple beings, living for the soft grass, the warm sun, and the comfort of each other's presence. Among them was a tiny baby goat, barely old enough to understand the ways of the world, but old enough to know love. His world revolved around his mother, her warmth, her soft nuzzles, and the way she stood protectively over him when strangers passed by. She was his safety, his teacher, and the only source of comfort he had ever known. Every morning, the baby goat would wake to the sound of his mother's gentle bleats and the rustling of her hooves on the grass. Together they would wander the meadow, sharing quiet moments under the shade of old trees. To the little one, nothing existed outside of their bond. He didn't understand hunger or danger. All he knew was the soothing presence of his mother, the scent of her fur, and the way her eyes shone with a calmness that made him feel that the world was kind and safe. But life in the village carried its own harsh realities, and the innocence of the baby goat's world was about to be shattered. One fateful morning, men arrived at the goat pen carrying ropes and speaking in hurried voices. Their eyes were fixed on the mother goat. She sensed something before the baby did. Her bleats grew sharp and urgent, her body tense as the men approached. The baby goat didn't understand why his mother seemed frightened, but he pressed himself against her side, trying to hide beneath her warmth. The men threw the rope around her neck, pulling hard as she resisted. The baby goat cried out, his tiny voice trembling with panic. He tried to push the men away with his small body, but they barely noticed him. They dragged his mother toward the gate, her hoofs scraping against the dirt as she struggled. Her eyes turned back toward her baby, filled with a desperation that pierced the soul. In that moment, even without words, she seemed to plead for mercy, not for herself, but for the little one she was being forced to leave behind. The baby goat was tied to a post to keep him from following. His cries filled the air, high and piercing, echoing across the farm. He pulled against the rope with all the strength his small body could muster, but the knot held tight. He could do nothing but watch as the men led his mother away. The sound of her bleating grew fainter as the truck engine roared to life. Dust rose in the air as the vehicle carrying her disappeared down the road. The baby goat's heart raced with fear and confusion. He didn't know what a butcher was. He didn't know what awaited his mother. All he knew was that she was gone, and every instinct inside him screamed to follow. The little goat struggled against the rope until his legs trembled and his body ached. The knot bit into his skin, but he refused to give up. With one final desperate pull, the rope loosened just enough for him to slip free. Without hesitation, he bolted down the path, his tiny hooves pounding against the dirt. His heart beat wildly, fueled by love and fear. He didn't think of the dangers of the road or the exhaustion that clawed at his muscles. All he knew was that he had to find his mother. Farmers shouted as he raced past their fields, dogs barked, but nothing could slow him down. Dust rose behind him as he chased the fading scent of the truck, his small body moving with a determination far greater than his size. The journey to the market was long and treacherous for such a young creature. The sun burned overhead, and sharp stones cut into his hooves, but he kept running. Every sound, a passing cart, a barking dog, made his heart leap with fear, yet he pressed on. Along the way, people stared in surprise at the sight of the tiny goat running alone along the road, but no one stopped him. Hours seemed to stretch into eternity as he followed the faint smell of his mother, trusting his instincts to guide him. With every step, the bond of love that connected them seemed to pull him forward, stronger than ropes, stronger than exhaustion. Finally, the baby goat reached the crowded market. The air was thick with the sounds of bargaining voices, clattering carts, and the scent of meat and spices. He stumbled through the maze of stalls, his eyes wide with panic as he searched desperately for his mother. Then, he froze. There, hanging from a butcher's stall, was a sight that shattered the fragile hope he had carried. A freshly severed goat's head dangled from a hook, its lifeless eyes staring into nothingness. It was his mother. The markings on her fur, the gentle slope of her face, there was no mistaking her. The baby goat's legs buckled beneath him as the reality of what he saw sank in. He let out a cry that silenced the market for a moment, a sound so raw and heart-wrenching that even the hardened butchers turned to look. It was a cry of pure grief, a sound of love torn apart by cruelty. The baby goat stumbled toward the stall, nudging the air as if trying to reach his mother one last time. He could not understand death, but he understood loss. He understood that the warmth that had always been there was gone forever. His tiny body trembled as he pressed against the cold wooden post, his eyes never leaving the lifeless face of the one who had been his whole world. Some of the onlookers felt their hearts ache at the sight. A few murmured in guilt, while others turned away, unwilling to confront the harsh truth of their daily lives. The butcher, hardened by years of the trade, paused for a brief second, his eyes meeting the baby goat's. Perhaps in that instant, he too felt the weight of what had been done. But no words were spoken. No one reached out to comfort the grieving little creature. The market returned to its noisy rhythm, but for the baby goat, the world had fallen silent. Hours passed as the baby goat stayed near the stall, refusing to leave. He lay down beside the wooden counter, his eyes fixed on the place where his mother's head hung. He neither ate nor drank, his small body consumed by a sorrow too deep for words. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the market. Still, he remained. His once bright eyes now seemed hollow, reflecting a pain far too heavy for one so young. Passers-by whispered about the sight of the tiny goat who would not leave his mother's side, but no one knew what to do. The story of the baby goat spread through the village in the days that followed. Some said it was a sign, a reminder of the love and loyalty that animals carry within them, a love as fierce and pure as any found in humans. Others spoke of it as a lesson in compassion, a plea to look beyond the convenience of food and see the living souls behind the meat. For those who had witnessed it, the image of the tiny goat chasing the truck and standing before his mother's lifeless head would never be forgotten. Though the baby goat eventually disappeared from the market, his story remained, carried from mouth to mouth, heart to heart. Some say a kind villager took him in, giving him a safe place to live out his days. Others believe he wandered the fields, forever searching for the warmth he had lost. Whatever became of him, his love for his mother left an imprint far greater than his small frame could ever suggest. His desperate chase and heartbreaking vigil served as a silent cry for empathy in a world too often blind to the suffering of its most innocent beings. This story is not just about a baby goat and his mother. It is about the universal bond of love, the pain of separation, and the reminder that every creature, no matter how small, feels fear and grief. In the silent cries of that little goat lies a lesson for all who hear it, a call to treat life, in all its forms, with the kindness and respect it deserves.